welcome, history enthusiasts. On October 12, 1492, after weeks at sea, the crew of a small fleet of ships spotted land. For the next 2 days, they sailed around this newfound land, but no one went ashore. However, on October 14th, 3 ships landed in the Bahamas. This is our first landfall in the Bahamas. Hi everyone, welcome to this channel. Today, we will look at the first landfall in the Bahamas. We'll see what happened when Christopher Columbus reached the islands. When Christopher Columbus's ships spotted land, they were off the coast of the island of Guanahani, the Lucayan archipelago, which includes the modern-day Bahamas, was thought by Columbus to be India. Because of this, the islands were named San Salvador. This was done by putting together the Spanish words for Holy Savior. As mentioned, Columbus never set foot on any of the islands in the Bahamas, so he didn't actually discover them. The islands were already inhabited by the native people. In fact, these islands had been occupied by the Lucayan people for over 3,000 years. These islands are only 100 miles from the Taíno home in Cuba. The Taíno people would use primitive boats made out of the trunks of palm trees, or the dugout method, to travel between the islands. They also used the stars to help them navigate the seas. So while Columbus did not discover the Bahamas, he did have the first recorded European contact with the islands. Let's take a look at how this all played out. In 1492, Christopher Columbus was sailing west across the Atlantic Ocean. He and his crew were on a mission to find a faster route to India. For centuries, Europeans had been importing goods from Asia through the Mediterranean Sea and the Middle East. The problem was that this was a long and dangerous journey. The other issue was that the merchants along the way added high margins to the goods, making them expensive. Columbus believed that if he could find a shorter route to Asia, it would make the journey easier and cheaper. Columbus's plan was to sail west across the Atlantic Ocean and then head east. If all went well, he would come across the Asian mainland or some islands near Asia. As it turned out, Columbus and his crew sailed farther west than planned. This was due to an inaccurate calculation of the circumference of the Earth. But it was also because Columbus wanted to reach his destination before the winter storms arrived. The small fleet consisted of 3 ships. There was the flagship called the Santa Maria, which was a large ship designed for cargo. Then there was the Pinta and the Nina, which were smaller ships that were fast but carried less cargo. On board these ships were 90 men of various nationalities. Most of the crew were sailors from Spain and Portugal, but there were also Italians, Germans, and even a few Africans. Of the 90 men, most were experienced sailors, but Columbus was not. He had little experience at sea. Columbus spent most of his life on land. He was an explorer, cartographer, author, and cosmologist. His research was done in monasteries and libraries. For supplies, the men brought food for 2 months, enough for 1,680 rations. They also brought water purification tablets, but these were largely ineffective. Water was often unsafe to drink. It was either salty or full of microbes. Alcohol was available for the men to drink. The crews drank a lot of wine, beer, and a type of strong cider. Other items brought on the journey included anchors, compasses, fishing nets, and weapons. The voyage began on August 3, 1492. After leaving Spain, the fleet sailed southwest toward the Canary Islands. There, the Santa Maria picked up an injured crewman, so they set sail once more, this time toward the west. 2 days into the journey, the ships parted ways. the Santa Maria continued straight west, while the Pinta and the Nina headed to the Canary Islands. This was done so that if the Santa Maria was lost at sea, then the other ships could continue the search for land. It was rough sailing ahead. Storms damaged the ships and food ran low. By mid-September, the ships were in uncharted waters. The crew of the Nina and the Pinta spotted land on October, but it was an island in the Lucayan archipelago. The next day, the crew explored the island, but they didn't go ashore. They named the island San Salvador. They didn't know that they were in the Bahamas. They thought they were in India. Because of this, the islands were named San Salvador. This was done by putting together the Spanish words for Holy Savior. Columbus wanted to get to Asia before winter, so he pressed on. Later that same day, the Santa Maria ran aground. It was probably a sandbar, but the exact location is not known. Columbus wrote that they were in 3 2 fathoms of water, which is about 20 feet deep. The ship's hull was breached, and it began to leak. Columbus ordered the masts to be taken down and the sails to be cut away. This was done so that the Santa Maria could not be seen on the horizon. That way, any sailors who survived the wreck would not be easy to spot. Lifeboats were sent out to try and rescue the crew of the Santa Maria, but only 39 men were saved. This left 51 men without a ship and without food. To help these men, the captains of the Pinta and the Nina offered them water and dried fruit. They did their best to care for the stranded men, but they could not keep them on their ships. So the captains allowed them to stay on the island of San Salvador. A fort was built to protect the men from attacks by other ships. On October 12th, the crews of the remaining ships set sail once more. They would soon learn the fate of the Santa Maria and the men who remained on the island. This time, the Pinta and the Nina traveled to the nearby island of Cuba. It was here that Columbus met the Taíno people for the first time. When Columbus reached the island, he had his men take a few of the natives back to the ships for food and water. The natives were very happy to meet the newcomers. Unfortunately, many of the Taíno died soon after boarding the ships. This was due to diseases brought over from Europe, such as smallpox and measles. It's estimated that 20% of the natives in the Caribbean died from Old World diseases. At first, Columbus thought he had reached India, but it soon became apparent that he was somewhere else. After spending several days on the island, he set sail for Jamaica, where he planned to resupply. But when he arrived, he found that the reported fresh fruits and vegetables were nowhere to be found. He stayed another day, but nothing changed, so he sailed on to what is now known as Haiti. After staying in Haiti, Columbus realized that he had not reached India. In fact, he had discovered a new continent. When he returned to Spain, he was celebrated as a hero. But let's take a moment to think about the Taíno people. Their population in the Caribbean would have numbered close to 1 million. Within 50 years of Columbus reaching the islands, their population would be reduced to 50,000, and within 100 years, they would be extinct. Over the next 4 voyages, Columbus explored the Caribbean extensively. He visited many of the islands that make up the Bahamas, but he never went ashore. Would you have liked to be on Columbus's journey? What do you think he might have felt like when he realized he had discovered a new continent? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider watching another one. And if you really liked it, subscribe for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching.